As you can see by all the crap I've got on the table and probably the title of this video, I am going to put together an Evo. So I have all the parts here. I've gone through and done all the painstaking hard stuff already. So in this video, we can just slap this thing together. So I have all my bearings on my flywheels here. I have split and balanced these things already. This is a brand new rod set, brand new pinion. These flywheels are brand new. I will do a video on balancing and truing flywheels in the future, but for the time being, I've got like 3 cranks that I've done in a row, so I've got 3 engines to put together before I do any more. So, like I said, all the bearings on that, pushed all the bearings into my case, the racers into my left case. I have all the little bits and pieces, all my cylinders are already good to go. I have new rings that I've already gapped and everything, so should be a pretty quick video. We're just going to go through, slap this thing together. I have new Cometic gasket kit here. I always use Cometic stuff. I find it's heaps better than that James stuff. So let's get through the intro and get cracking on this thing. Alrighty, where are we going to start with this thing? Like I said, I've done all the annoying stuff and worked out my new bearing sizes. I have put a new Timken setup on this thing. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with these later style motors. I think they are 55 or something. They go to this Timken style. So what it is we got 2 taper bearings that are opposite each other. So on all your early stuff, you would have 2 flat needle rollers like this on each side. And what you would do, you would put your flywheels in your cases and you would have to shim float. So you would put little washers in here and shim it so that the flywheel doesn't have excessive side-to-side movement in the cases. But with these Timken assemblies, they are super simple. I can just slap it in the case, glue it together. And what they have these little spacers in here. So there's a spacer here and then there's a spacer I've already pushed into the case that is between the 2 races. Now that sets the preload on the bearings when we rattle up our sprocket shafts or our sprocket drive shaft here. When we rattle this nut up, this puts the pressure on the bearings and then it floats the crank between the cases. Super simple way to do it. Heaps good. And these are like 110 bucks or 120 bucks or something in Australia. So super, super cheap. Like I said, I've already put all the bearings in this. I've put the spacer in this. I've pressed the new bearing on here and I've measured up this roller into our right side case. So that is like 4/10 to 8/10 of float in there. So that's all good. I've test fitted that. I've test fitted this. So basically we can fly through this pretty quickly. We can knock this sort of in our cases nice and quick. The whole time doing this, I'm going to just put some oil stabilizer on all the bearings. This is, sure you can put a bit of grease or something, but this motor is going to run pretty soon. So I'm just going to put this oil stabilizer on everything that I want lubricated. It's not as thin as sort of normal oil, so it sort of hangs around a bit longer and doesn't just drip off. So jam that up like that, do a bit in here. And then we're just going to slap our flywheels in there. Super simple. So get our rods to the top, jam that in there, make sure that's there. My bits of wood are freaking not big enough, so I'm going to have to get some bigger ones, but that is basically the gist of it. That'll just go in there like that. And then what I'm going to do, you want to make sure, I've inspected most of these cases already, but you want to inspect you don't have any burrs or nicks or anything in your cases that is going to sit up. These cases want to be perfectly together and we're going to glue them together. So you don't want to skimp out on your grey RTV. Now it has to be a high temperature RTV. It can't just be a regular old RTV. It has to be a high temperature and get the fucking expensive stuff because you don't want to be splitting these cases anytime soon. So I'm going to get my cases all cleaned up here. I'm going to put a nice bit of RTV on it and then we'll come back and slide these things together. I already have all my bolts cleaned up and test fit so I know where all they're going to go, and then we will slap these fucking things together. Alrighty, so I've updated my little doodad here. So when I put my crank in, my long as fuck sprocket shaft, it does not hit the ground anymore. So she will give a nice spin just like that. So basically all there is to do next is we're going to put some, I use a 3-bond. So we're going to put some 3-bond around our cases here, slide them together and then start bolting it up. Pretty simple really. Like I said, with these Timken setups, they are super quick to put together. You don't have to worry about shimming and test fitting the motor and all that stuff. So I'm just going to go around with some brake clean up the surfaces here. Don't forget this little guy in the center. So I'm just going to apply a little tiny bit to both sides of this. Just so when it comes together, I haven't missed any spots. This stuff says it fills up to a 3mm gap, so I definitely don't have any gaps like that. So it also says to let it get a little bit tacky before you put the stuff together. So I'm just going to go through, put a really thin layer of this on. I'm sure this stuff's cancerous and I'm just putting it straight on my finger, but you know, you've got to die of something, they say. Nice thin layer of this around the whole lot, and then we will slap them together. Righto, so there's pretty well not much else we can do here. Let's slap this freaking thing together. Try not to get this glue anywhere we don't want it. How nice is my bearing fit? Super fucking nice. There it is. But then all we do, start fucking putting our bolts in. I'm going to put a little bit of blue Loctite on my bolts just because I don't want these fucking things coming loose. Want them to stay tight. So there's two places. So one's here and one's over the other side. And you want to put them all in before you tighten anything up. You're putting them all in sort of matches up your surfaces up there and does all that shit properly. So don't just put these in and tighten these ones up. It's not going to work very well. So like I said, I'm just going to go through, put all of these bolts in, and then we will come back and tighten them up. Make sure they go in the right places, people. So I have all my bolts in there now. I've just got them finger tight just so it sort of locates the cases together. And something to have a look at, get yourself a little straight edge and make sure all your surfaces are flat before you go through and tighten this stuff up. Chuck your finger in here, make sure this is round, just because, you know, sometimes it's not absolutely perfect. And if it's not, all you want to do is put a barrel on there and bolt it on there. Bit easier with like shovel head and pan stuff where you got your 4 base bolts. You can bolt the plate on there and square it up, but on an Evo, obviously you got big studs up here. So mine is good, so I'm just going to go around and give these all a little bit of a nip up. Don't go crazy, you just want to go around slowly and tighten these up. So I like to go around and do a little nip like that, and then just make sure this thing turns over nicely. Absolute butter. So just make sure if this locks up at any stage, you've done something wrong, or a clearance or something is wrong. So always check that this guy does the rotate. So I'm going to go through now, give these things a good nip up, and then I'm going to go around and clean up all the goo that is starting to ooze out. Don't be fucking lazy and leave it there. Clean this shit up. You want to go around a few times and lock this up too. So I've got my cases all cleaned up now, got all the excess glue off these things. It turns over really nicely. What I did, just before I forgot, on your case here, on your oil pump side, there's a little tiny threaded hole here. Now you want to cap that thing. What they usually use that for, there's a big, long, like extension on this, and it's a hose that goes to your primary. Now, they use that for like the latest shovel stuff where the oil pump actually fed oil into the primary, and then it hooked up and then returned and then breathed through here into the primary as well. Absolutely fucking terrible. They always leak like a sieve. I deleted it on my FLH and all that sort of shit. Always delete them. They're the fucking worst. Not only is it putting your oil through the chain and putting all that metal filings through your engine, it also just leaks like you would not believe. Anyway, so I just put a cap in that, just a little bung, just put some thread sealant on it, some high pressure thread sealant, so that's good, we don't forget that. The other thing I want to do is I want to put the other side of our Timken assembly on, because this sort of crank will fall over and not be in the right spot. So here is the other side of my Timken assembly. So remember, the most crucial thing about this is this little spacer. This has to go in, otherwise your bottom end will freaking blow up. So just like I'm going to do on everything on this engine, it's going to get this assembly lube in here. This is going to sort of hang around a bit longer than normal oil until we get oil pressure in here, until this thing is absolutely singing. So there's a few little fucking like jigs you can buy that'll screw on here and push these freaking bearings on, but I just quickly made up a couple little things like this, so I can put this on here with the nut and I can just rattle them home. I don't have to worry about buying some expensive fucking Jim's thing. Righto, so that is the bearings. They are locked together now. This thing should move super nice. Look at that, perfectly now. So that's all sorted. We can freaking leave that alone. The first thing I want to do, you probably wouldn't think we would start here, but I want to start on the oil pump. The reason I want to start with the oil pump is because I want to put this whole thing together, put our little drive wheel in here before I put my oil pump drive on the pinion side. And that is because I want to be able to torque this thing down, get it all complete, and I want to be able to spin it with my fingers. The reason I don't put the pinion drive on the crank is, it's difficult to work out how much pressure is on the oil pump. If you lock this thing down in the wrong spot and for some reason it binds up, you're not going to know because you're going to have your oil pump drive gear and everything in here. This thing should spin over nice and freely. So I'm going to put this together first, put our little wheel and everything on here, make sure we can spin it nicely by hand, and then we will put all this together. And then what I want to do, I want to put the chest on and I want to put oil in the oil pump and make sure it is feeding oil to our bottom end before we put all the top stuff on. If you've got the wrong gasket on here, if you've got the wrong chest on here, the oil won't go to the bottom end, and that is the most important part. So I'm going to go through, get all my gaskets and everything ready for my oil pump here, and then we will assemble that. Alrighty, so oil pump stuff. Now, the most important thing about your freaking oil pump is make sure you have the right gasket. This inner gasket between your case and your oil pump is the most important. Pretty sure all later shovel and Evo stuff is all this latest style where it has all these little holes. But when you get into your early stuff, some of them don't have these holes, and then if you put the wrong one on there, there's certain parts of your engine that aren't getting oiled. So very important to make sure when you put this thing on here, your little holes line up. So you've got all these little holes have little sections cut out for them. So that is the correct little gasket for that. So the other thing to note with your oil pump, when you get a kit for these things, it's got a tiny little seal on that inside there just to stop your pressure side from pumping into your freaking scavenge side. That's very bad. I need those. And the other thing to remember is our two little caps on the top here. So what this one is, this is your spring inside with a ball that stops your engine from wet sumping. So if you've got an Evo that's wet sumping, this is the one you need to go into and either replace the ball or reseat the little seat in the bottom of the pump. And this one is your oil pressure. So you've got a little plunger in here that you can just see through that hole there. And you've got a spring on top. So this guy, it manages your oil pressure. So when you've got too much pressure, it lifts up your little plunger and then it bypasses oil pressure here. So that's how that guy works. I've already been through it. I've serviced all that, new ball, new seals on these two, and all put back together. So obviously he lives on there. Now, another thing that is super crucial on these oil pumps, and you probably don't realize, but you want to coat this thing in just some grease. So this sort of does two things. The grease helps the gasket seal, because I don't know if you guys ever seen grease when it goes dry, it goes super sticky. So this helps the seal stick, helps everything seal properly. And the other good thing about it is it'll stick the gasket in the right spot for you, so it doesn't move when you're trying to put this thing together. So just a nice thin seam of grease on it like that. And then if you watch, we can just stick it to where we want it to be. It's not going to fall off. So sticks on super nicely just like that. So this is our oil pump drive shaft, right? We want to make sure that goes in there, turns nicely, it's got no banging around. That is super freaking nice. So like everything else, we're going to put a little bit of oil on this thing, make sure it slides through and does everything it should. I'm going to go through and put the drive gear on. So this is the one that goes inside our chest here. So same thing, it's got a little key. There's 3 keys to put your pump together. So this key is for your drive pump. And just remember, I've seen a few people fuck this up. This little clip here, the one for a circlip, that goes on the inside. So that goes in here. And then this style clip that comes with it, that goes in your oil pump. I have seen someone do this the wrong way around, and what it does is it gets caught in here and you see a little imprint there. It looks fucking terrible, so don't be that fucking person. You'll fuck your oil pump super fucking quick. So we just want to jam our drive gear in here. You can put the gear on the shaft first, and then you feed the key in. And then you will put the little freaking circlip on. So this is a little bit fiddly. So, oh no, I got the key in. So key in, little pin here. And then we will put our circlip on. I've got my little circlip on now. You can see my shaft spins. Other thing I like to do is make sure our drive gear for our pinion's right. Stick that on there, spin it, it does the job that it's supposed to do. So let's freaking put this oil pump together. So remember, you got 2 keys left. One is for your scavenge side. So remember, these are our gears. Scavenge side is always bigger. So you want to be removing more oil than what you're putting in, otherwise it won't keep up. So that's all set up there. Once again, oil freaking everything when you put it together. So we'll put our key on. Key in there like that. Oil our gear up. Remember, big side is freaking our scavenge. Oil our gear up. And then sometimes a little screwdriver to hold the key when you push the gear on, so it doesn't spit it out the back. And then other side, same thing. Oil up everything when you put it together. In there like that. Make sure it spins nice like that is. So remember, there's 2 bolts for our oil pump that hold the back on, and then there's 4 that hold the whole lot on. So get our 2 back bolts, so they just go in the top here. I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite on our oil pump too, just because I don't want to swing off these bolts, so I don't want them to rattle loose. So they'll be relatively, not loose, but they're not going to be as super tight as everything else is going to be. So that gear has to mesh, and we have to put the shaft through that seal. So it can be a little bit of a juggling act. There it is. Do these, no, don't do them up. You just want to finger tight until they come up close to where they freaking want to be. And that is, I'll explain, because I want to get this oil pump turning over nice and freely by hand. If you fucking do these oil pumps connected to the crank, like I was saying, you can't really tell how much pressure is, you know, if you've clamped this down in the wrong spot or something weird going on. So that's why I like to do it like this. So still move it like that. That's exactly what we want. So I can still move it with my finger. I'm not sure if you can see that. But now we want to put our other key in there. This one is a little bit tricky. Sometimes grease will help you stick it as well, so don't be afraid to put grease in here. Oil our freaking gears up again. Now this one's a little bit tricky. Get your screwdriver and make sure you don't shoot the key out the back. That. And then the last bit is this little tiny clip here. So this little clip is what goes on the end there to make sure that your gear is not sort of cruising around on the shaft, I suppose. Can be a little bit fiddly sometimes. There it is. Spins nicely. Always make sure it spins nicely. Our other gear here. Look at that. Mint. Righto, so we put our other gasket here. Same thing. Grease her up. Helps stick it on. So this is our pressure side. So we're going to do a little trick after this that I was telling you about. So if you're fast forwarding, freaking don't. Oh, I want to put some Loctite on this too. Not fucking too much. Alright, so basically what I've done, I have just sort of lined the bodies up as best as I can. So the outer with the inner. And then I just sort of nip these up just a little bit. Nothing crazy. Doesn't really like that. That's very close in there. Should just get it. Just like that. And you just want to keep nipping it up slowly and keep moving your oil pump drive gear. See how I can still move that with my finger? Just want to slowly do these up. So you make sure you can keep spinning that. And if it doesn't want to spin, you just give this a little bit of a clock, loosen it, give it a little bit of a move, and then try it again. So if it's not moving freely, you know that something's going on in here. Maybe your gaskets are too thick, or you know, maybe you are one of your gears is pushing on a gasket, or its gasket's stuck underneath it. Still moves mint with my finger. So that is that. Like I said, I want to put the chest on this thing, and I want to make sure that we're getting oil out our big end and our lifter block screen here. So come back in a sec and I'll show you how we're going to do that. So off camera, I got all my oil pump drives sorted, and I've got my pinion timing gear here all on, all torqued down, ready to go. Just remember, with these pinions, you need this special like oval key to do it up, and it's left-hand thread. So if you're gonna make something, just remember it's left-hand thread doing that up. So like I was saying before, I wanna do two things. I wanna check to make sure our oil pump is feeding to the right direction. So to do that, we have to put our chest on. Get the bolts here. And the other thing I want to do is make sure our clearances are right. So Sam's getting a brand new, the owner of this engine is Sam, and he's getting a brand new Andrews E3 cam. So I had this thing laying around. The stock cam for this thing was a little bit tired, so I'm going to give him a nice new hot cam. So what I want to do, when we bolt our chest on, we need to have float in here on our cam and our breather gear. If these guys are tight between the case and the chest, it will obviously cause heat and weld stuff up. A good little story, my buddy Isaac, when we first started up his Gen shovel, we bought it basically sight unseen. We started it up and then it came to a halt like 10 seconds later. And pulling it apart, we noticed that someone had not put the gasket on the chest. So when they put it together, they did it without a gasket. And that little gasket thickness is all it takes to lock this thing up, and it locked the engine up and fucked it basically. So very important to do this. So we're going to put this thing together as if we are gonna run it for the last time. Needs to be torqued down, needs to be everything needs to be together. And then we go in here with a screwdriver through the top and make sure we have plenty of play on this and on the camshaft. Now, obviously there is some sort of measurement on that. Basically, just don't want it fucking tight. So this is an Evo style on a shovel. These breather gears are steel, but Evo get a lot of plastic stuff. Like even this guy on a shovel is usually steel. Evo, it's freaking not. So I'll get the gasket for this. So once again, the reason I like using Cometic, they have these really good gaskets. If this was a James gasket, this would just be a shitty paper gasket. And when you try and pull off just a shitty paper gasket, it comes off in a million pieces and you have to scratch it off. These Cometic ones, they have a steel insert and they are coated in this sort of rubber. It seals way better than what the James ones does. So that's why I always go a Cometic kit. Their seals are way better, I reckon. Once again, make sure all our holes line up. Make sure these dudes line up. Everything that needs to line up. But before we do that, let's stick our freaking cam in here. So on the back of the cam, you've got your thrust washer And that sits in there, and these two tabs here are so it doesn't spin. And then you have your spacer. So if it's too tight, you need to change the thickness of this spacer. So we are going to work out whether it's going to be right or not in a second. Now, I'm going to do it all up, like I said, and if we have the oil pressure and we have the right float and everything, I'm just going to keep going. I'm not going to bother pulling this apart because, like I said, it has to be in completed form to test all this. So remember our timing marks here. So you have timing marks on your big end here. So we want to line that dude up. Come here, bro. So a little bit tricky when there's no pistons in it. It wants to fucking fly around. That's it there, but that washer is there. That's it. So we've got on our pinion shaft, there is 2 marks, but the easy way to remember, our dot is on a male of our gear and the line on the pinion is on a female. So they line up, and then the other dot lines up with our breather here. Once that's lined up, we don't have to worry about it spinning like that. So let's just go through and put this cover on, and then we can check all our clearances and stuff. I've already put a new cam seal in this guy, so I don't have to worry about pressing a new one in. I've already done all these annoying jobs before the video. Alright, so I have this thing all buttoned down, that's all torqued down to what it's supposed to be, and obviously we have to do this before we put our lifters on. So all we do is jam our hands in here and see how that thing bangs back and forth? So she's got too much float. So sometimes it's too tight, now it's too much. So man, it's like 5 thou or something they say for this. So all you do, you get your feeler gauge, like obviously I already have, and we just jam it just between there like that. Just jam it in there like that. So I've got 20 thou there, 1/2 mil. So I'm going to pull this apart again, see if I've got a washer that's, I don't know, 15 thou bigger or something. And then I'm going to put this back together. The other one we want to check is our breather down here. Just do the same thing. I can push it back and forward a little bit. So that's what you want in there. That's all right. I'm just going to change this cam. All right, I went through my cam. I had a bigger washer, so I put that in there. That's all super nice. Now, this crazy little contraption I've got here is a pretty important part. I like to do it, sort of make sure all your oil pump's working, make sure all your passages are open and working, you've got the right gasket, all that shit before you throw it in the bike, start it up, and then look for problems. So basically what I've got here, I've just got a, like a little tube off a bottle, and I've just got it clamped on to our feed side. So this is just going to gravity feed into our pump. And when we turn this thing over, you watch this go down. See that going down? And see it's coming out of our lifter screen. Here, see it's pissing out of our lifter screen. So we know that's working. And it's also coming out of our oil pressure gallery here. So we know that shit's working. So let's put that together. So in our lifter screen area, we have this here, little witch's hat they call it. And this guy is what filters the oil before it goes to your lifters. So it goes that way down. I see a lot of people getting that wrong. And we will screw it in and lock it up. You can see all the oil coming out of our oil pressure gallery. So that is a good sign. Alright, lock that up, and I also want to cap this. We know that gallery's working. I want to cap that so when we turn it over, we can see the oil coming out the big end here. So let me find a little cap for that. Alright, so here's a little plug. I'm just going to plug that for the time being. Sam's going to put an oil pressure light here, aren't you, mate? Make sure this fucking thing always has oil pressure. This is a nice engine. Alright, so that's plugged up. Let's keep turning this thing over and watching our oil go down here. Our oil is pissing out. See, now it's pissing out of our into our lifter blocks there. That's freaking good. And we are getting it into our big end. So I'm just going to keep pumping this over. Oh yeah, there's pressure there. So we got plenty of oil here, and we got plenty going into our freaking BM. So our oil system is working a treat. So I'm going to put the lifters in this thing now, I reckon, and I'm just going to keep turning it over and making sure this shit fucking bleeds up. So that is a really, really good way to make sure all your oil and everything is working the way it should be. So like I said, all our cam sides done, all our timing and everything is sorted. Let's go through and freaking put our lifters and lifter blocks in, and then we will put the top end on this stupid thing. So I have all my lifters here loaded up. Obviously I loaded them up with some oil stabilizer, all in the bores, all on the lifters. Now this is pretty straightforward. We're just going to do the same thing with our gaskets. Just going to grease them up here, nice thin layer of grease. Don't use fucking glue and stuff like I've seen people use before. If you get glue in your little oil pressure hole and block it up, you're just going to fuck the whole thing. Just do it the right way. You don't have to glue these things together. So the only thing you need to really worry about when you're doing your lifters is making sure that said oil pressure hole lines up. So just like that, oil hole lines up. And on our Evos, it's pretty simple. It's got a rear on it and a front, so you can't fuck it up. But on a shovel or something, they only go one way anyway. So the other good thing about oil stabilizer in this, see how slow it is for the lifters come down? If you were to put like a light oil in it, these lifters would basically just fall out straight away. So it is handy putting a heavy oil in it for that too. So that goes in, look it in there, our lifters line up with our cam lobes, everything's sweet. The only thing I like to do to put on these threads, I just put a thread sealer, because these threads go all the way through into our crankcase. So if these leak, then it sort of comes out the top. So that's all I do, put a little bit of thread sealer on there. Don't put high pressure fucking thread sealer on there. You don't want to Loctite these things. Just want to seal the thread up. Don't put fucking thread tape either. What's with people putting thread tape on this fucking stuff? Stay away from your plumber's thread tape. Right, so this is pretty straightforward. I'm going to go through, do all these up, do the same on our other side here, and then we will start putting some studs in this thing. Because remember, on our shovels and pans and knuckles and stuff, we have 4 base bolts and then 5 head bolts. But on an Evo, we've just got 4 studs that go through the whole lot, and then the top is just clamps the whole lot together. So it's way more efficient and way less time consuming building these things or taking them apart. So one awesome thing about the Evo. So like I said, I'm going to go through, put all these in, tighten them up, and then we will come through and put those studs in. Alright, so now we've pretty well got most of the hard stuff done. The bottom end's probably the most, technical thing to put together. The rest of it's pretty easy. So all we're going to do, I'm just putting a little bit of Loctite on our studs here. I'm just going to wind them in. I've got 2 nuts locked together just to give it, you don't have to fucking swing off these. They just need to be firm into the block. Obviously, when you tighten the top, it's spinning in the tightening direction anyway, so they will tighten in there. So don't lose these nuts in your fucking flywheels in the bottom of the engine. You'll be fishing them out for a while. So I'm just going to go through, put all of these studs in, and then we will come through and freaking put our barrels and pistons and all that crap in there and get this thing going. Alrighty, I went through and put all my studs in. A few of you that noticed, I was putting them in upside down to start with. So just a little note, if you guys are doing an Evo at home, the flange goes up, which seems weird to me as well, but What does make sense is more of the thread goes into your aluminium case, and if your bolt were to sort of bottom out on that, it would just thread it into the case anyway. So not the end of the world, but I overcame that. Anyway, after that I put the pistons on this thing and I put all the rings in it. Now I'll just chuck up on screen now this cool little diagram of where your ring gaps go. I've always seen people fucking, you know, explain it in a really annoying way or something that doesn't make sense or something or other. This is just a plain, this is how it goes, visual representation of where your little gaps go. Anywho, so after we got all that sorted, like I said, pistons on, rings on, got my barrels here, I have oiled them up. Now, these barrels can go front or back, both are the same, but make sure you have gapped your rings to the right barrels. The barrels should be close enough anyway that they can put anywhere. So, I got this super cool little tool the other day from, I don't even know, just a hardware store here in Australia, and it is pretty sweet. It's just like this little ratchet guy and then this guy, which has obviously an open in it. So most of you would know you can't put a conventional piston ring compressor on this thing because once you put the cylinder on, you can't get the fucking thing off. But with this, it'll go over your rod. So let's give this fucking thing a go. I haven't used it yet, and I'm fucking hoping that this makes life easier because putting these rings on can be super annoying by yourself. So basically you just put the thing over your rings like that, and this thing has like a ratchet. So you can put pressure on it and keep it to where you want. So I've oiled it up. My barrels are lightly oiled. Don't put too much oil in there. I used to absolutely douse them in oil, but what that did was once you started the thing, it just burnt heaps of oil, which it doesn't need. You pull apart an engine that's been running and you see the minimal amount of oil they have in the actual barrel, it's quite surprising. So don't need a heap of oil, but just want to make sure that one, this one. So with any luck, we can just, oh no, fuck. All right, don't do what I just did. Make sure you remember your base gasket. So little base gasket, remember to line up your drain holes and your dowel. These have a drain hole and a dowel. So I haven't lined up the dowel. I'm not having a fucking win on this one. There we go. So on, dowel, drain hole, sweet. Always make sure you got that drain hole not covered, otherwise this thing will frickin' make some smoke. Trust me, if that head's full of oil, the only place it's got to go is into your compression chamber. So let's try this again. It's pretty sweet, this thing. Just pop it on, do it up just a little bit so you don't have to bang the hell out of this. Barrel on, and then, I don't know, I think I'm going to have to hold the bottom, give it a whack. Oh, look at, I think this has done it. I think it's done it. So let's see if I can slide this thing out. This is the next hurdle. Oh, look at that. Look at that. And then does it good? Oh, I am a huge fan of that. That makes life so much freaking easier. How good is that? Now let's just rotate this just so this other piston is at the top as well. How fucking good is that? So with these Evos, like I said before, on a conventional like knuckle, pan, shovel, you've got 4 barrel bolts, so 4 bolts on the base of your barrel that holds your barrel down, and then you've got 5 bolts going up into your head. But on an Evo, you only have 4 bolts holding each cylinder down, which is super good. It makes, you know, life super easy putting it together like this. You just got to sort of juggle everything, put the bolts on, torque it down, 4 bolts once, and you're done. So I'm going to go through, put this front cylinder on, and then let's go through and smack the heads on, torque down, be done with the top end sort of thing, and then we will get to putting push rods and our rocker carriages and all sorts of crap on this thing. So let's keep racing through this. Now what we've got to do is put our head gaskets on and our heads. I like to just go over this and just give it a good hit with brake clean it all up. Some people put like a fucking, what do they call it? Like a copper spray on their head gaskets. These things really don't have that much compression. They don't really fucking need it. That's more like your fucking turbo fucking cars and shit. They need that stuff. But for your humble little Evo like this, once again, Cometic gasket kits are super nice. They come with this multi-layer steel head gasket, which are always better than those just like paper James gaskets. So Cometic doesn't pay me to say that. It's just just my preference from the experience I have. They are much nicer to use, the Cometic stuff. Obviously they're a bit more expensive, but if you've got enough money to play with old Harleys, you can buy the good shit. Look, easy. So with our freaking, where's my NECs? With our head bolts, this is basically what they look like. It is just like a big long bolt. Obviously it's female in here and it has just a big head on it like that. So what I want to do, there's a long one and a short one. And the reason for that is the long one goes in the middle here and the short one goes on the back side there near the spark plug. So what I like to do is just fill these things, not fill them, but put a nice generous bit of anti-seize in our holes here. When you're torquing stuff down, they always supply a thread lube, and that is because if all of your friction is on your threads and the head of your bolt, it doesn't actually torque down as tight. So when you lube up the threads and your head, all the friction, then there's less friction so that it can compress more. So always put like an oil or an anti-seize or something on your threads when you're torquing stuff down. It actually makes it tighter and torque it down more. So something to keep in mind. So I'm just gonna seat this guy and then put the smaller one on the opposite side. So fill him up, plenty of anti-seize in there, and underneath the head so it spins easily on the casting gear. So the sweet thing about Evo, you would have seen every time I put a big twin together, you are clocking the heads. But with an Evo, that's not a thing. They're keyed. I mean, they've got dowels and stuff in it, so you don't have to clock the heads. Just gotta make sure it's sitting on the dowels and everything, and it is super, super solid. So I'm gonna go through, you can have a look in the book if you really want and see how much pressure you should be putting on these nuts, or you can just fucking swing off them like I'm gonna do. So completely up to you. I'm gonna put this head on, put the other head on, and then we will look at putting push rods in this thing and putting our rocket cages and all that sort of shit on. So now we are starting to get started. So now we are getting started on the valve train for this thing. So I've already done the annoying stuff like put O-rings in. So you've got an O-ring in your head. Evo ones are actually really good. They're much thicker. And you can actually run these Evo ones on later shovels and stuff, and they are super good. It's just what color would you call that? Like a reddy brown color O-ring. So they're one in each of our holes, and then in our lifter blocks we have a steel insert, and that is the sort of base for the O-ring. So everyone has one of those. Now the next thing is our pushrod tube. Now that is, how many bits is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have our inner tube, we have this little collet, a spring, and then another seat for an O-ring, and there's the O-ring, and then our base. So pretty straightforward. The only other bit is our little locking guy, but don't worry about that for now. So we're going to go through and put all these in with our push rods now. They sort of sit in there pretty nicely sometimes, but the other thing is our push rods. Now our push rods are 3 different lengths. Some push rods are like this, some aren't. So usually they are like 2 lengths. So you'll have like an intake length and then an exhaust length, but these are 3 different lengths. And that is because 2 are the same and they are our intakes. The next one that's a little bit longer is our rear exhaust, and the longest one is our front exhaust. It's pretty obvious why that is. You see our front exhaust is furthest away, our front exhaust is furthest away and our rear exhaust is quite close. That's why they're 3 different sizes. So I'm going to go through and just jam these push rods in where we want to put them before we put our rocker gear on. Now, these push rods are adjustable. Stock Evo push rods are not. They are like car push rods, old, V8 push rods. They are just solid like this. And that is because they are hydraulic lifter. So the hydraulic lifter can take up quite a large range. So these push rods don't have to be as accurate as, say, like a solid lifter engine. I'm pretty sure with these push rods, the idea is you can take them in and out with our rocker cages on top. With our stock style, you cannot. You have to take the whole rocker cage off to get it in and out. So I'm just going to go through and put all these in while I'm here, because it's going to suck if I don't put them in and then they don't fit with our rocker cage stuff. So I'm going to go through, jam them in here like this. Our last one, front exhaust, is the longest, remember? So I've just got these things fully compressed so that we can come back and adjust them once we get our rocker cages on. So that is majority of what we want to do. I'm going to go through, get our rocker cages set up, and then we'll come back and bolt those bastards on. Alright, so let's just do a quick run through of our little rocker cages here. They are fucking super simple. The rockers are pretty close to a shovel rocker, same sort of deal. They just have a shaft that'll go through your rocker, and the shaft has a little notch out of it, and what that does, it intersects a bolt hole here, and the bolt is what stops the shaft from spinning. So that's pretty cool. The other cool thing about these rocker cages are, in a shovel, for instance, you know how you have oil pressure coming into the end of your rocker shaft? Well, on an Evo, it's pretty sweet. The oil pressure comes up your push rod. So if you have a look in your rocker arm, there is a little hole here. So the oil comes up your rocker arm, oils all your rocker, and everything has a little squirter here, so it squirts on to your little pad on top of your valve, and then it just sort of disperses and goes back down to the return. So pretty cool little things they did like that in Evo, and that's why these engines are so fucking good. Like, they literally saved Harley at the time. These engines were so good. So basically all we're going to do, oil up our rocker, bit of oil inside that. We're just going to put this in first. Always make sure, oh God, it's a boy. Make sure this stuff fits before you just go hammering it in. Obviously, make sure your push rod little button goes to the center. Jam her in there like that. And then just push that through. Just make sure that, remember, this little flat here has to line up. So I'll get my precision bonking equipment. Just like that. That's something an American would do. Bash it with some pliers. So straighten up like that. Push that through. Make sure your little thing goes through. And that is freaking it. So I'll slap this one together. And then we will come back when I set the camera up and we can have a look at the top. And we will bolt these freaking things down. Righty, so the other cool thing I will mention about this, it's just a gasket, and front and rear boxes are actually the same. So the gaskets will be the same. Another cool little thing about Evos, they make a lot of the front and rear stuff the same so that there's less spare parts. Pretty freaking smart. So as always, let's just put a little bit of oil where our freaking rockers go, just until this thing gets oil pressure up here. Another little fun fact about Evo that like Pan and Shovel and Knuckle don't do, when this thing has low oil pressure, it stops giving oil to the bottom end and solely feeds the top end. So when you saw me just turning this thing over before, it was only feeding the top end and not the bottom end because it hasn't gotten over a lot of pressure. So the bottom end really doesn't need much oil because it's going to be banging around in there anyway, but the top really does. So the only thing you really need to worry about up here is you've got two different bolt lengths. So our bolts over here are actually longer. You can, if you look down this way, you can see these ones are down a little bit. So as always, I'm going to put some anti-seize on these bolts before we go too far. Like I said, there's two different lengths. So short one, long one goes here. Short one goes over here and holds that rocker shaft to stop it from spinning. Pretty cool little design these things are. Have I got the fucking gasket in the right spot? Now I do. There it is. So that's the long guy up here, short guy here. So it has 4 bolts, they're 4 main bolts, and they hold this whole assembly down. And then you've got 3 smaller ones, and then I think they would just be for sort of oil control to just get a bit more of an even seat around the whole thing for the seal. So it's the only thing I can think of with these smaller ones. So jam all these in, and then there's actually 2 more that I have forgotten, but it's 2 more cap screws and they go in the ends here. Once again, I think that's just to bolt down the end here and make sure the seal has a nice, pressure around the whole thing. So anyway, this is pretty straightforward. I'm going to go through, tighten these up. I'm going to do the front as well. And then we will start doing some push rod adjustments. Like I said, these are a hydraulic lifter engine. So it makes the push rod adjustment a little bit easier. So let's come back and do that. So legitimately every time I try and do a video on setting your push rods, there's some clown in the comments that just doesn't get it. So I'm just going to keep doing it until, you guys just get the gist of it. It's really quite simple. So all we're going to do is just rotate this engine. Obviously spark plugs out. I haven't put the spark plugs or nothing in this engine, but if you've got your engine at home, you're doing the same thing. Spark plugs out. So we can turn this thing over nice and easy. So all we're going to do is, because I had these things super loose, I'm just going to turn this over till I see that one's just going down there. So I'm just going to, because I had these things all the way loose, so I'm just going to take up the slack to start with, just so we can start to see what the engine or what the cam is doing. So just remember, these lifters are not bled up as well. So because we're dealing with hydraulic stuff, these are empty, not bled yet. So that is at the base right there. So you see how that one is now going down? This one is going up. So we're gonna, just wind this one down to take up that slack. Now this is a little bit more difficult when you have your lifters like that mine are with no oil in it. You sort of got to look in there. The lifter sort of has a clip and you can see when the lifter is going past the clip. So we're just going to turn it over, have a look what's going on in here. So my intake is on its way down. So my exhaust is going to be completely closed here. So what I want to do, I just want to take up the slack so there's no up and down movement or side to side. And then because these are hydraulics, they're not like a solid, so you don't just sort of tighten it up so you don't get up and down, and that's right. With these, we got to screw down into our lifter. So we're halfway between, so we want these push rods to be halfway between the stroke of our hydraulic lifter. Basically, the way a hydraulic lifter works is when it gets oil pressure, it bleeds up the lifter. So wherever the push rod likes to be, it bleeds up to that, and then that's how it stops all the noise, basically. So I'm right on the end of it here. So rule of thumb with most of your push rods, it's 2.5 turns once seated. So this is seated nice and lightly on top of my freaking lifter here. So I'm just going to get a little pen and I'm just going to mark on my lifter here so I can, on my push rod so I can see. And I'm just going to go around 2.5 times. So 1, 2.5. So you can work out what thread pitch this is, and then you'll be able to look somewhere and work it out if you want to know exactly, but 2.5 is usually pretty close. So once you do that, you can look down in there, make sure your lifter is sort of where you want it to be, which it looks like. So that is exhaust. So let's just turn this over. This is compression stroke, so nothing's freaking happening. And then exhaust should do something. There it is. So once exhaust is opening like that, see how the exhaust valve opening? We want to do our intake valve now. So that is basically the gist of it. I'm sure some of you have really lost it, or I've probably explained it not great, but do it a few times till it doesn't make noise and you'll freaking work it out. So that's it there. So 2.5 turns. And they're super bled down like this. You can pretty well do it with your fucking fingers, eh? It does not make life easy. So 1, 2.5. So then we just lock it up, and then I will go and do the rear cylinder. It's a bit easier once you do this, do your sort of run-ins. This thing gets a bit of oil pressure, puts some pressure in the lifters. It's sometimes easier to bleed them, to set them when they're bled. So you can actually have a bit of feeling when the thing is opening the valves and all that sort of shit. So that's front done. Let's go and do rear, and then I'm just going to put some rocker boxes on this thing, and we are pretty well done with this rebuild. I've got to obviously put the carby and charging system and stuff on there, but that's all easy stuff that you don't need to witness. So let's friggin' do it. Very fucking nice. So probably the second last thing to do on this, we want to seal up our rocker boxes, then we want to put our main crankshaft seal in. This thing is pretty well done. So the oil seals for the top of these things are pretty fucking straightforward. They only go one way. That's the wrong one. When I say one way, there's a top and a bottom. So these are the bottom ones. They just slip into our rocker boxes here, just like that. Sometimes they feel a bit long, but they do go. Just like that. And then we have just like a middle ring. So that goes over, like I said before, the boxes are both the same. So all these parts are the same and interchangeable. It makes it so easy. The other one, there's a little one in the middle there. I don't know why they bothered making the heads hollow like that. They should have just covered it up. Would have been one less seal, but who the hell am I? And then on the top, there's a little tiny seal for your bolts, because your bolts obviously go down into a oil gallery, not a gallery, but an oil area. So the top of the box is full of oil. So you need to seal your bolts. So basically your top seal, and then your lid just like goes on like that. They are pretty freaking simple and easy to work on. Not like a fucking shovel where you can't get into the heads at all. You can do most of this in the frame, I'm pretty sure, on an Evo. Correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure you can take all these boxes off and everything in the frame with an Evo. So that is pretty well the boxes put on, just like that. I got some nice button head bolts to put these in, so I'm going to go through. I thought I had the right thing for that somewhere here. Nope. I'm going to go through, tighten these up, do the front, spin this engine around, and then let's do the main crank seal, and then that's this thing pretty well rebuilt. So last thing on this big old donk, let's do our main crankshaft seal. So this is the seal that will keep all the oil inside the engine. So these racers have sort of an oil gallery. It's not pressure, but it's like oil that's fallen down. It can go inside here and come to this side. So you need to have a seal on that. Now these seals, you want to put this around the right way. So if you've got one of those stupid primaries that sort of has the oil going in and out through the oil pump and all that, you run it around this direction so the oil can come back out like this, so the oil can go out of the engine into the primary. But if you've just got a normal dry primary like any normal person should with its own oil or whatever, you run it this way. So a little spring is on the inside holding the oil in. Now you want to take your little, this is your little spacer sort of a thing, your oil seal. You want to take that off and you want to put it in here first. And the reason for that is it's pretty impossible to put this on, and then smash that on there and get it all on without fucking the seal. So a good little trick is to put the seal on this first and then hit the whole lot in. Makes life way easier. So a little bit of oil where your seal runs as always. In like that. Boots. So that guy is together. And then we slide that on there. Just like that. And I've got a special little tool here. It's just a bit of tube and it perfectly fits around the outside of this seal. So we can tap it in. If you try and go around it and bash it in, you'll just end up dinting it. So you want to just get yourself something like this. I doubt you'll have a socket this big, but if you do and it goes over the thing, congratulations. But this is basically how I usually do them. They can be a bit stubborn because the bigger thin seals like this can be a little bit tricky to, they sort of go skew-if and so that is freaking it. That is our seal in. I just want to make sure it's home where it should be. Doesn't feel like it. Does now. So that is our main seal in there. That is it freaking done. I am going to put a charging system and a carburetor on this thing. I'll do that on my Instagram account. I'll put a little link here if you want to follow me. Jump over there. You can keep up to date with what I'm doing day to day. But for this Evo build, I reckon we are pretty well done. Looks freaking schmicko. Righto, that is it from me and this freshly built Evo here. Like I said, this thing is already sold. Going to my buddy Sam. He has a bike that had a very tired Evo in it, so this is going to be a very refreshing engine for him. I'm just going to put points in this thing for him. I'm going to set it up, time it, carby, and a charging system, and then he's going to slap this thing back in his bike. So a lot of people asked on my Instagram if this is the swamp shovel. Obviously not. That is coming up next. I have all the cases blasted and everything ready to go. I'm just waiting on some pinion bearings that are on backwater in Australia, so I have to find some. So once I find those pinion bearings, I will be assembling the swamp shovel as well. So that is pretty well it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one.